Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with Tony and Nick Chiappetta, co-owners of Chiappetta Shoes. Thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So tell me how your family came to this country and then ultimately to Kenosha.
Well, our great-grandfather, Pasquale Chiappetta, came over here from Cosenza region in Italy. He landed Ellis Island, just like a lot of immigrants at that time. Took a train, went to Colorado.
We believe he worked in coal mines with his brother Carmine in Colorado. And
that was not a fit for him. So then he took another train back to the Chicago area, stayed with some relatives, distant people, kind of get him going. He was a cobbler by trade, so he was doing that. In the Chicagoland area, it was a little crowded for that industry. So they said, maybe you should go north. And so he hopped up. He had a distant relative up here too, and in Kenosha here, and that's kind of how he ended up here.
yeah, and it's kind of a funny story. So his first cousin was Ralph Tenuta's mom, who was a Conforti, and that was before they had the deli. And he lived with her for, I think, a couple of years, and then struck out on his own and ended up buying the house, 1700 50th Street. So where our first business was, bought the house first. And so.
Okay, do you remember what year that was?
It was in the early teens, 19 teens. He came over with his brother, and our great-grandfather, when he came here, his name was Pasquale, but he went by Charles to, Americanize himself. And he fought, or he was a part of the Italian army. We have a picture, which I'll get to you. He was a Bersaglieri, which was, I think, a rifleman in the Italian army. In 1903, we have like the original picture. It's cool. So he was, he served his time. And then when they came here, his brother was early 30s and fought in World War I. So we think it was around 1915 when he came to Kenosha. We're not 100% sure the actual date, though. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so he set up his own shoe business, and he made shoes.
So
he did repair and he made shoes. That was the initial. So before it was actually Chiappetta Shoes, he was more just a cobbler by trade. And then the shoe company gave him, was it 500 pair or something like that on consignment just to get them started, and that's actually how the retail side of it happened.
Yeah, there was a lot of people in the shoe repair trade back then, obviously. He started, from what we've kind of looked into and were told, he started a shoe repair shop right at the old train station, and he had that, we believe, from 1918 till 1922. We officially say Chiappetta Shoes started in 1921, just going back to the old records. But when he bought this house on 1700 50th Street, it's still over there, he built the store. So we think that 1921 is when he bought the house, and then the store was built and opened up 1922, and that was right on the corner. But he had a shoe repair shop prior to that, so very interesting time.
What was his training back in Italy? Did he come from a family of cobblers back in Italy as well?
We don't know exactly. The stories from our great aunts and great uncles is that he had shoe repair training. So, talking to our great uncle who passed away at 102 years ago, he always said that he had shoe repair training back at home. And, that's what he came here with. We also were told that he had he specialized in kind of customizing and making shoes for disabled people, polio and things like that. So it's kind of cool. You know, we do a lot of that type of stuff here now too, and you know, it's fun to say that we've been doing the same thing for over 100 years, literally.
So how was this passed on from the beginning?
You know, from generation to generation, we're fourth generation at this point. Pasquale did a lot of shoe repair and customization. Our grandfather, he was more of a businessman than he was a shoe repairman, or you know, he was a retailer, but he was a guy of the city, and he did a lot of work with disabled people as well. But he kind of started. Dr. Scholl's at that time was right out of Rosalind Franklin School in Illinois, and they became practicians, I think it was called. So they did over-the-counter inserts, and they were made out of like spring metal. It's really interesting. But he did inserts back then too. And you know, going back to the shoe repair side of things, there was about a 2-generation gap. Our grandfather and our father didn't do too much of that from, let's say, the 1960s till about 1990s. And shoe repair wasn't quite as important, and then we got into the retail side of things, and that really is what drove the business for a long, long time. So, yeah, and you know, like going back, we still have tools from our great grandfather that he used to use, and you know, a lot of the equipment and stuff like that. It's still great, you know, it's better than what they make now. Yeah.
So then we get to the fourth generation, the two of you. Now you're back to what your great grandfather did. Actual cobbler work.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what is your training?
Been doing it since birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're around it, yeah. So as soon as we could hold a broom, when my grandma Helen was running the show, you know, we'd show up after school or what have you, and form a daycare, if you will, and she'd say, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, you're here. Here's a broom. Sweep the stock room." But just watching our father work on, because he got into the pedorthic, which is the custom orthotic side of things, and modifications of shoes, whether it was lifts or buttresses or what have you. So we kind of grew up on the grinder and everything like that, and just watching them for decades. You know, that kind of was the main training for us.
Yeah.
Tony did end up going to school for pedorthics at Northwestern.
Yeah. So, you know, the whole cobbler trade thing, it's a good business. You don't make a lot of money on it. You can get caught up with, you know, little work that takes a lot of time, and you got to be careful. You can make good money if you do projects that are, you know, higher dollars and, you know, resoling and things like that. Where we and our father really wanted to differentiate is looking back at like what Dr. Scholl, before the whole corporatization aspect of that business went. Before that happened, they made inserts for people, and you know, our grandparents, so our grandpa and our grandma, they did a lot of like over-the-counter inserts, and then as our father got into the trade, custom inserts became, you know, much easier to make. So the equipment, the materials became much more prevalent, and our pops, Fred, he wasn't sure what he wanted to do. He went to college at St. Ambrose, and he was dating our mom at the time, and he was like, I don't know if I want to get into the shoe business. So he got his college education, bopped around, I think, to 2 different jobs, and realized, you know, working for other people isn't for everybody. Yeah. So he joined his mom in 1985, a year after I was born, and that year is when we started our pedorthic trade. So the repair side of things really became kind of modification. So, you know, even back in the 80s and 90s, people with polio, that was still, you know, a thing. You got 1 foot that's a size 10, 1 foot that's a size 8, and that was, you know, it's a tricky thing to deal with. So not just outside of like severe deformities, but just everyday type of, you know, situations. We developed a trade very early on, on customizing inserts and shoes, and that's really where we differentiated as a business. So
Oh, it's more orthotics and
Yes.
building whatever inserts are necessary per person's foot.
yes,
Right.
yeah.
So tell me how you go about doing that. I mean, somebody walks in and they go, what do? You look at their feet, you watch them walk, what happens?
Yeah, we have like a gait analysis that we do for all of our clients and things like that too, just to see. Most people suffer like leg length discrepancies if they've had hip surgery or hip replacement, knee surgery. It's very common for that to happen. Most of the time, the customer, when they have this operation done, they don't realize that this is a pretty common thing to happen as far as the leg length discrepancy. So coming out of their recovery, generally their GP or their therapist will say, "Oh, it looks like you're off a quarter inch, half inch," and then that's where we come in. So we come in to fulfill that, to try to get them balanced. Because if you're off, you don't think a quarter inch makes much of a difference. When you're off, one leg is shorter than the other. But then you start getting into hip issues, knee issues, all the way up to the neck. So that's very common for that to happen, and that's kind of where we fill that need by one, providing the right footwear, two, our inserts or custom orthotics or over-the-counters, and then three, actually doing the modification of the shoe to get them level.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you get referrals from podiatrists?
Oh yeah. We have a good relationship with most medical professionals in the area. I'm not afraid to disagree with somebody, but we like to say what we do is not rocket science. Biomechanics can get relatively complicated. There's a lot of things going on in the body, but just having a good understanding of your tools, shoes, inserts, canes, walkers. How do we make somebody whole? And when we do custom inserts, we help all ages. I got kids that come in. I got 20-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 80-year-olds.
Athletes to
And it's a simple idea of proper weight distribution and how you go about that, whether it's an over-the-counter insert or a custom. We don't like to pigeonhole people into saying you got to spend $500. We like to give people options. So just being able to have the tools that are financially feasible for people is really important, and then kind of the skill set. The big differentiator for us that from our dad's generation was that he's 65.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Our dad's generation, the third generation, a lot of those guys were shoe people, and they had parents or grandparents that had history of repair and things like that, and 80s and 90s retail was pretty crowded. You could go to Sears and get measured up and get some pretty good service. So a lot of the smaller shops looked at differentiating, and the pedorthic trade was a really good way to offer kind of that ultimate service. And that started early 70s. Our dad got into it in 85, and that's where we differentiated. So we grew up in that mindset of, hey, you got to be the absolute best when it comes to customer service, and this was always the forefront of doing that. You go over another generation, and I'm 40. Nick, you're 37.
Yep.
37. And a lot of our generation didn't pick that up. They said, I want to go to school and get a marketing job, and AI is going to automate all that in a sec. But having skills, things that you can make with your hands, is super important, especially for this young generation now. They got to be building skill sets, and we're hiring. It's important to build skill sets, and we've always looked at that as like, hey, this is how you build a business. You got to be able to help people out and solve problems.
So do you actually resole shoes or do that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah. So we have a full-time master cobbler. He's been with us for 10 years. 10 years now. We did a lot of that before, but it was light work. We added a master cobbler that he manages about 80% of our custom orthotic business, the manufacturing aspect of it. We've got a full-time mold maker that just works with plaster and the molds. So we got a nice crew, but on the repair side of things, we still have a full repair shop. And again, it's always like, it's a great service to have. It's time consuming though, so you got to make sure you're spending the right time on offering the services to just make the business run properly. So
Are there that many shoes that you can actually resole anymore?
Fair amount.
Yeah.
Fair amount. You still can. It just depends on the construction of the shoe. All work boots for the most part can be resold. Most dress shoes, things like that, can be resold. Dress heels, pumps, things like that. It's a reheel. So yes, and we'll be honest with the customer. If hey, one, it's not worth it financially for them, they ultimately make the decision. But we'll be transparent. Be like, hey, this is what it probably will cost. It's up to you if you want to go ahead and do it or not. But I would say a fair amount can be resold, rehealed.
Big thing with footwear, around the same time when like pit orthics and the materials became easier to get, EVA, ethylene vinyl acetate, it's a closed cell foam. That's what's used in like 95% of shoes. And EVA foam is cheap. It can be made lots of different ways, but over its lifetime it compresses a lot. So talking about shoe repair side of things, most shoes are made with an EVA midsole. That's like the main part of the shoe. And once EVA shot, it's kind of dead. So shoes with like polyurethane that have a little bit different compound, or traditionally constructed shoes with like a welt where you can actually peel off the original bottom and put a new piece on. The big thing is just what materials it's made out of. So most, not to knock Skechers, but shoes under, let's say, $120, generally speaking, aren't going to be resolable. Shoes in the $150 and up range are typically resolable. Price point a lot of times correlates to materials that are used in the shoes. So, yeah.
Okay. And a master cobbler, what is a master cobbler? What can they do? What training does a master cobbler have?
Pete did a lot of training on the job with what I consider a master cobbler is somebody that's been doing it for at least 10,000 hours, and Pete's got that down pretty good. So
Do they get a certification of sorts or no?
Not on that. He was a college graduate, very artistic mind. He was working with a similar kind of outfit down in Illinois, doing modification work. And his mother was a customer of ours, and she came up. She goes, "Hey, my son, he's really good, and he's been doing lifts modifications for I think it was like 5 years, 2 years at that time."
Point, yeah.
And he came up, and he was a good fit, and so he's been doing a lot of work. We trained him up on a lot of what we knew and how our processes, and then he's really. He's awesome. He does a good job.
It's interesting. So, like, I'm a certified pit orthist. Most of my work is both. It's a combination of manufacturing aspect, that the physical manufacturing of something, and as well as like customer management, helping people out. Doing the assessments, figuring out how to help people out after the fact. The training for that, there's not much like hands-on work. So when it comes to the certification part of it, it's much more, the patient side of things. On the shoe repair side, there's a trade association, the SSIA, for the shoe repair industry, and the president was just in yesterday. We talk about that all the time, like, why isn't there a certification program? And just getting people to actually teach it, that's the problem that they have, because there's a fair amount of younger people getting into the shoe repair side of things, but it's kind of niche. A lot of like the Instagram people and people following the ASMR videos and like sewing things, and people like watching it, but there's not enough interest as of right now for a certification in that. So a lot of it's just hands-on work, working with people that are doing it already. And we're seeing an uptick in interest in the last 5 years or so. People like, oh yeah, I want to learn a skill, so it's nice to see.
Okay, and you mentioned your staff. You mentioned the person who makes the molds. You mentioned your master cobbler. What other kind of training does your staff have? I mean, when you look for somebody to hire, who are you looking for, and how do you work with them, train them?
Well, I mean, a few of our team leads and our GM, they came from the shoe industry. Again, different outfits from different parts of the state, what have you. So they already had training in our industry, and one in retail, let alone footwear retail. You don't come across guys like that very often, or gals. So we kind of lucked out a little bit. We had some people that were trained through their associations. Most of these brands, say athletic shoe brands, they have tutorials, training videos that you can sign up for, and there's it's like exams and things like that to understand the setup of the shoe, what it's used for, and then basically just gaining their knowledge on that.
Materials.
Instructions. So yeah, and then there's plenty of good reads and things like that, and then it comes down to me and Tony, our father, training up them with our knowledge over the years too.
Yeah. Well, so we've been around for 104 years. We are right now at 22 or 3 employees, I want to say, including us in the family. We are hiring, and with our business, we have a pretty diversified business. So we have our retail shop. We have an e-commerce, operation. So we sell on ChiappettaShoes.com. We sell on Amazon. We have a fulfillment team, some guys in the back, warehouse type work. We have kind of marketing, e-commerce people, and then us. And talking about the training side of things, we look at, for the sales floor, you go back 10, 15 years, and there was a lot more people in the retail trade. And again, you could go to Sears maybe 20 years ago. You could at least get measured up, So there used to be a lot more people that could speak to people, that understood customer service, and there's a lot less now. So, we're always looking for, during that first interview with people, okay, are you looking me in the eye? Give us the basics and we'll mold you. So it is more difficult. People are so used to looking at phones nowadays, and just not having that human interaction. It's challenging. It's very challenging. So, with us, the training side of things, there's a lot that it's mostly on the job. We're hiring for marketing right now, and just finding people with tangible skill sets. Graphic designers, they know Adobe. For marketing, you have to know Meta and Google and all this stuff and how to do it all. And even with that, it's so easy to find information, yet it's still hard to find people that have tangible skills. So it's an interesting, environment as a hiring employer that we live in right now. But going back, for the sales side of things, we have Dr. Scholl's books from the early 20s that
apply.
It still all applies. Hey, sit down, measure this person up, handshake their hand. Here's all the different bones in the feet, and it's stuff from 100 years ago, it still 100% applies. It's interesting. So we have
how do you divide up the business? What does each of you do? What does your dad still do? Okay, who does what?
Nick makes everything work. Nick's the operations guy.
Yeah.
I very much value having Nick with us. I'm kind of the ideas guy. I'm the CEO. We have a lot of different aspects to the business, so we manage a lot. And we consider ourselves manufacturers. So we manufacture our number one product, our custom orthotics. And that's our number one product in both volume and dollars. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we hang our hat on. That helped us get through COVID. That helps us, manage tariff stuff or any economic pressures. We're very diversified, and that's something that we always looked at. We have a full repair shop. We do a lot of different things, and having a glue guy is really important, making sure that everything works properly. So I'm very grateful for my brother over here. Not a lot of businesses have that. Not a lot of businesses have, 2 people that can really run the whole operation. So, I'm the CEO. We work on marketing together. I'm mostly on the manufacturing and the pit orthic side of things. We both do sales. Kind of have our hands in lots of different baskets.
So how did COVID affect your business?
Well, the whole world shut down for
6 weeks.
6 weeks essentially, but we ended up bringing our people back early. We didn't want them out. We wanted to give them an opportunity. That's where our e-commerce side, our website and everything like that actually started to grow. Like Tony said, we offered kind of a promo to just get people in the doors for custom orthotics and just kind of start generating some sort of revenue stream at that time. And then we had a hustle, and the first time we ever did a tent sale, and we talked about it. Me and Tony were staying late one night, like, well, we got to think outside the box. We can't just sit here idle and expect it all to work out. We got to be creative. So at that time, everybody wanted to be outside, and nobody wanted to be indoors. And we're like, tent sale, let's try it. Yeah. And that was the first time, and that was a huge success for us. So since then, we've been doing a tent sale every year, every July. People seem to enjoy it. It's a different atmosphere for our clients. We have our I would say our daily, our normal clients that come, and then we also have just like tent sale clients, which we love, and we know like, hey, they're going to come once or twice a year. We're going to load up.
We try to buy special deals for that kind of stuff.
Yep, we try to be able to move different products, but I would say the biggest thing with COVID, we finished 7% down.
9.8% down.
9.8% down.
That'll be my number one success for my entire career is only being down 9.8%
Yes.
in 2020. It was
the hardest we ever
killed
worked.
ourselves. We worked. We tried so many different things. We did a Nurses Week promotion.
Yeah.
We did anything we can think of. We threw it at the wall, and it kind of all worked out. It was crazy, and we had some golden parachutes. Chicago Tribune at that time. We had been doing advertising with them almost every week from September of 2019 to that point, to March, and we had a big April sale planned, and then everything shut down in like March 17th or whatever it was. Yep. So we canceled all our advertising, and we're kind of first 2 weeks we're kind of like, all right, what are we doing? And we said, hey, we got to get things going again. So we called the Chicago Tribune up. They gave us what normally would be a $22,000 ad, full distribution every Sunday. They gave it to us for $1,200, and we said, I will take every single spot I can get, and I will book this out until whenever I can. I think we had those ads running from early April through September, I think, that year. Yeah. And then they finally said, this is a little too much of a discount.
But that allowed us to scale up our Illinois business.
Yeah.
And especially with COVID, Illinois had more restrictions and things like that, as far as what you could do or could go to or what have you. And Wisconsin was relatively open.
Yeah.
So that's where we saw the increase in our Illinois clients and new customers and people coming out, finding out who we were. And our Illinois base has grown substantially. It was primarily because of our advertising and because of the COVID.
Yeah.
So how does your customer base between Wisconsin and Illinois?
It's about 50-50.
Yeah.
It fluctuates, but we get a lot of people. Because what we do, we have such a different type of business. Yeah, we sell shoes. Like you can go online and go to Dick's or Rogan's or whatever, and there's a fair amount of crossover with the products that we sell. But people come in, they like to get measured up, they like to have regular customer service. We have a lot of people that buy online after they shop with us for the first time and things like that. So we have a lot of return customers both in store and online, which is nice. But yeah, just with our overall business, we have a very good brick and mortar business, been around forever. Online business is something that we're trying to continue to grow too, and a big part of that is just kind of using the things that we learn on the sales floor. How do we implement that into our website? And you talk about all this AI and stuff like that. I think that's the next big wave of deep knowledge in an industry and bringing that and being able to scale that out. And there's a lot of technologies that it's not super easy these days, but it's something that I think you'll see our generation starting to do a lot more. So yeah, as far as diversification, yeah, I'm really happy that we hit the Illinois market very well. That was being operators in the business. You know, COVID shut a lot of people down, and a lot of people were scared. And we looked at it as like, hey, we got to get our acts together. But it was a good opportunity. There was a lot of good stuff that came out of that, and all the tariff talk and everything like that. You know, it's easy to overreact and be afraid, or be angry. But we always look at these types of situations as opportunities, and let everybody be afraid. Let everybody think the prices are going up. Maybe we lower the price. It's always an opportunity in our mind.
So how do you look at, I imagine a lot of your product materials are imported.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and how do tariffs, whenever they occur, how do they affect how you operate?
So, our last trade show in February that we went to, me and Tony were talking, and we're like, well, I wonder if, this tariffs was going to come in. We asked every single one of our brands, hey, what do you think about tariff? What's your plan?
This is February of this year.
And they're all like, oh, we don't think it's going to affect us this year. And we were kind of shocked because,
that was before all the exact numbers were out.
Yeah.
But people were pretty, chill about it.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, it's a possibility. You should always prepare, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And at that time, everybody said, oh, no, we're not worried about it or anything like that. We're starting to get a few brands, but what it sounds like it's most, if they do implement price increases, it should be like a $10 retail upcharge. So they would pass it on. Now, this is very similar to the shipping crisis that happened 2021 when containers went from $8,000 to $40,000 for brands to import, containers full of shoes.
Yeah, that was a huge cost increase.
And that was a huge cost increase. Like some going up $20, $30. Red Wing, for instance, went up, $30, $40 a pair overnight.
Yeah.
So at the moment, we'll see. And it depends on the country. I guess we'll all know more as a country what will be affected hopefully in the next month or so. But
yeah, it's just like looking at our products. We carry two companies that are made here in the States.
Yeah.
SAS, which we don't do a ton, and then New Balance has a couple of products that they make here in the States. Great shoes, but
well, Thorogood, they have some global.
Thorogood, Red Wing. Okay, so we got a couple more, but you look at what most people are buying nowadays is athletic shoes. That's just dominating the market. And your better quality athletic shoes, by and large, are made in Vietnam.
Yep.
Products under $100 are usually out of China. And Vietnam, even going back before the first Trump administration, there was a big switch from China to Vietnam.
Yeah.
The tariffs that went in place on the first Trump administration didn't really have much of a pricing impact from what we remember. There was very minimal, if anything. And where products are made, companies that are making product in China, talking to the sales reps, they're worried. They're very worried about this fall season.
Yeah.
They're worried not just about the price part of it. They're worried about, hey, am I going to have product to sell?
Yeah.
So, when we look at it, we're in a good spot. Again, opportunity. We're retailers. There's always shoes. Our pops always said there are always going to be shoes. You'll find them somewhere. So, with companies like Hoka or New Balance, a lot of that stuff is made in Vietnam. They currently are at a 46% tariff. A lot of them are talking, minor price increases, but nothing drastic. So it's not a bad situation. And if we have to, we'll buy other shoes. And again, we're diversified, so we'll figure it out.
So how has the store and business grown from the beginnings over the decades to today?
Well, we were in our great grandfather started in a 300 square foot.
Yeah, it was like 500
square foot.
Yeah, it was small.
Yeah. A little storefront. This is our fourth move. We've been here since February of 2 years ago. 23.
Here, you mean where?
4820 75th Street in Kenosha. It used to be the old Omega Burger Captain's, the ugliest building in all of the state, I would say.
That was bad.
When we moved in, we had our grand opening. Mayor Antarami was there, and I gave a speech, and I said, "You're welcome, Mayor, for buying the ugliest eyesore in Kenosha and beautifying it." As a joke, he's a good guy. It's so we've scaled up. A small operation. We were a men's store for a long time in my grandfather's time. At that point, there wasn't a lot of women in the workforce. It was all men wearing three-piece suits. So
guys bought 3 pairs of shoes to a woman's 1 pair of shoes. It was a different time back then.
And then times changed, switched, of course. And our grandmother, when our grandfather passed away, suddenly my grandmother Helen took over the business, and when she did that, it started to kind of transform into more women's and children's and footwear. And then when my dad came in, Fred, he kind of transformed it into sit and fit, comfort, podorthic, orthopedic type footwear. And same with our mother when she joined him 30 years ago.
1995.
1995, yep. So that's when she started getting her kind of touch on it with more, comfort fashion and the accessories,
purses have been a
things like
good
that.
part of our business. So.
And then when me and Tony joined, we're more diverse with our online, our website, our podorthics. Still the same customer service, more offerings with accessories and things like that too. So it's definitely transformed. It allowed us to scale up and grow, and going from 300 square feet to now to where we're at 15,000 square feet. So one location though.
Yeah, one big headache.
One big headache. So we have a lot of friends that have multiple stores, and they say if you don't need to do it, don't do it.
Yeah, yeah. But we've always, something that's kind of been a generational mindset. We've always believed in a 12% growth rate. That's our target. And, looking at other businesses, and, we know the shoe industry is a small industry, we know. And a lot of people are acquiring other doors. They're buying other businesses, or, guys in their 60s, hey, I'm going to retire. Other companies are going in and buying these buildings and businesses. And, that's always been an opportunity. Before we moved to Highway 50, we had lots of conversations about, hey, do we do multiple stores? Do we branch out? Do we kind of try to reach our marketplace and saturate it a little bit? And our dad always said, hey, that just means more head count and a lot more headaches. And having one big store where people can come to is a great winning solution. And with being a destination, pretty much our whole business's life. We never were on the main thoroughfare. Yep. We always had a business that people came to regardless of where we were at. So we still have that mindset. Now we are on Highway 50, and it's a great location. But we still treat ourselves as the underdog and view things that way. But the 12% growth idea, I look at that as it makes us a reasonable pathway to not overexpand, because you see businesses do that all the time. They try to grow too quickly, and they buy up businesses, and it's always a mess. And we've taken that long-term 4-generational approach, and we got the 5th generation a little bit in the works right now. So slowly indoctrinating them at this point. So
okay, you mentioned how every now and then we got to talking. How often do you actually get together kind of as an official, we're going to meet and we're going to discuss things?
Not enough.
Yeah.
When we're working, it's people always kind of take it for granted. Oh, you work with your family, you're talking to each other all the time. No, we're doing 8 million things on a regular basis. And I would say at a bare minimum, like once a month, we'll kind of just, have the cigar and beers in the garage and, talk shop, or sit down. We like to plan on a monthly basis with our GM, sales team, marketing people, and in a formal setting. No cigars in those meetings,
No.
but yeah, we meet on a regular basis and kind of talk. We are a seasonal business, so it's every 6 months is kind of a change, and that largely is determined by the manufacturing side of things and when shoes come in and all that stuff. It's interesting though. We're seeing a kind of a change right now where winter boots used to be purchased in September and October. People would buy things before they needed them. You go back maybe 10 plus years or so, and with Amazon and in 2-day shipping and all that stuff, like, people buy things when they need it now, and that's changing a lot of stuff. And it's a slow trend, and we're kind of seeing it in the sandal business now too, where we used to sell a lot of sandals in March and April, and that's not happening until another month or so. So the manufacturing side of things happens 9 months plus before we get something. But trends change, and people buy things when they need to now, which is just something as a retailer we have to realize and adjust our operation to help that out.
So did each of you officially join the business right after you finished your education, or how did you?
Well, yeah, I worked full time through college. I would say my junior and senior year, I graduated with marketing and finance, and at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I was coming into the business or not. I was really into kind of the stock trading aspect and thinking that, but graduating in 2009, and it was a lot of opportunity out there, and student loans were kicking in. So I was already working, and I said, yeah, you know what, I'll see what happens. It's what I've known my whole life, high school and college and things like that. I've always enjoyed it. I've always loved it. And then all of a sudden a year goes by, and, I'm loving what I was doing. And I said, no. And going back to what you said, a little bit ago about our father, working for himself, and, obviously we worked for our father. It was something that was, very enjoyable. So I never left. So 2009 was when I fully joined. And
yeah, I knew what I wanted to do pretty much from the jump as a kid. I always liked being in the business. I did mountain biking, and I used to work in the workshop and just making little gloves and stuff like that. And I just loved, manufacturing stuff. And, as a kid, one of my favorite things that I used to do was after school, not every day, but a lot of days, just go to the shop. We were on 22nd Avenue at the time. I just sit and watch people interact, and watch our parents or grandparents and grandma sell shoes. And I just talking to people and interacting with people. It was kind of a science to me, and I liked it at a young age. So I always knew what I wanted to do. I graduated in 2008. I got my certification in the pit orthics in the education was in 2009, and then I got certified in early 2010, I believe. And that was kind of the jump of things. And we give our parents a lot of credit, where our grandma was a very bullheaded, strong woman that did not like taking orders from anybody. One of the reasons that we grew slowly, good or bad, but she was very tight with her dollars and made sure the business was functioning properly. And I'll give our parents a lot of credit for giving us a lot of leeway in keeping the reins on things, where we weren't going crazy, but help allowing us to run the business and have input and make changes when necessary. So, yeah.
So have there been any unusual foot issues that came into your store where it's like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this before. What am I going to do about it?
Every day. I'm not kidding you. I've been doing this, professionally since 2010, 2008. But, literally every single day. I am not able to say that I have seen everything. I see wild stuff every single day. And that's a fun part of my job. It's when you make a custom insert, I could see 100 of the same feet and have 100 different solutions. Everybody's body's different, what you do at work or whatever it is.
Activity level.
Yeah, it's that's the fun part of the job. It's like, oh, what's going to happen today? And then, not just selling shoes, but like actually building something. That's the exciting part that we like to do, because, there's always going to be something new. And, just again, the retail side of things is an exciting thing. You can meet new people every single day, and not many people nowadays, but some people like that human interaction and like being able to sit down and talk to people. And when it comes to sales, that's the key is finding people that like people. Just being able to, hey, sit down, tell me about your day. Who are you? What are you doing? But when it comes to the feet, I would say always the worst case scenarios. It can happen at an early age, but just ankles that go real bad, terrible arthritis, and everything just kind of collapses and falls down, and that's never fun. We deal with a lot of diabetics too, which implements, with diabetes, circulation issues that offers additional challenges for us to figure out solutions for. So,
foot surgeries. A lot of people have had bad recovery with foot surgery, and they do it again, and then they do it again, and it gets worse, and then
you had 10 surgeries.
At the end of the day, they're filled with metal, and it's like trying to be honest with them and say, your feet are never going to be the same what they were prior, and we always say foot surgery should be like the last thing you should do. I mean, it's necessary, but if you don't necessarily need foot surgery, it's kind of like try more accommodative approaches, inserts, proper footwear, proper fit. We try to guide them in that direction.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, we'll see a foot that comes in, and it's just foot ankle fusions, things like that, bad accidents, falling off ladders.
One thing that we see a lot of that is, I would say, not misdiagnosed, but a missed problem, is that knee and hip replacements are extremely common. Mm-hmm. And again, we have good relationships with almost all the doctors in the area. But one thing that just gets totally pushed aside is that when a knee or a hip is done, a lot of times there's a little bit of a difference after the fact, leg length discrepancies. And like almost every day, we'll sit down, hey, what are you in for? I just need a pair of shoes. Oh, let me take a look at your foot. Things are a little different. And did you have a knee replacement? Yeah, 2 years ago. My back hurts too. It's like, hey, it's like unwinding a puzzle, and that's the fun part of the job. So, yeah.
Right. What's the future of the business?
More shoes.
More shoes.
More shoes. 12% growth every single year is what we're targeting. With our current location, we've been here for just a little over 2 years now. We always believe in a 7-year cycle. So, this is something our pops kind of, I think, probably learned in college. But you got to keep the customer excited. So for our brick and mortar business, it's about every 7 years we like to do a major update change, something. We were in our last shop for 23 years. We were trying to buy a place and move for our 100th anniversary. That would have been our 21st year in our shop on 39th Avenue. Things happen, but we're in a great position now, so happy about that. But there's always opportunity to help feed out. There's way less customer service, so our brick and mortar business is strong, and that'll always continue to be a focus of ours. That's always our primary area. The website, big push there is, again, we want to implement what we know about feet. Being able to solve problems. Our mission for Chiappetta Shoes is to be your first step when solving foot pain. So we're trying to implement free tools where people can go on our website, hey, this is my foot, why do I have this problem? That kind of stuff. And that's where, like questionnaires and all this AI stuff. We're currently building out a questionnaire kind of format. Very excited about that. Should have that up by the middle of this year. And just continuing to grow and solve problems. So not many people are doing that though. So it's a good opportunity.
Well, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah,
thank you.
you.